Welcome to the 9642 podcast. This is your host, Mr. NumberNine.
And this is the Fool.
This is where me and the Fool give our
Unqualified and unrequested
ramblings on the various issues in the world of sport.
or something like that.
Hello everyone. We are back to discuss our bread and butter, which is the round ball code.
Yeah.
But we are not going to talk about the Premier League or European football or any of that. Now, we're going to be looking at the football that is happening on our shores here in Oceania, the greatest confederation in soccer.
Yeah, woo!
Now, currently, we are in the match day 23 of the A-League, currently happening this week.
Yep, we'll just
And
finish
top of the table, taking the country, the city definitely, and the country by storm, are the Black Knights, Auckland FC. 13th team to join the A-League franchise and get their license, and they've had a great first season. They managed to do the double against their self-proclaimed main rival, i.e. the Wellington Phoenix. Those of you who are not familiar with the history of the Wellington Phoenix, they used to be the Auckland-based club. They were called the New Zealand Knights. First they were called the Football Kings, and then they were the New Zealand Knights.
Yeah. Or was it the other way? No, it was that way around, wasn't it?
And then they moved to Wellington, the franchise. Auckland lost their team, and it moved to Wellington, where they do have a cult following. The Wellington Phoenix are very, very popular and well supported in Wellington, so it was a good move.
Yeah.
And in a way, it kind of worked out where, pretty much, I think, in New Zealand, most soccer fans kind of support the Phoenix, unless you're from Auckland, because then you have Auckland FC or West Coast Rangers / Waitakere United.
Yeah.
As they used to be called back in the day. Because there's already two big soccer clubs in New Zealand who compete in the OFs. And Auckland City have played really well in the World Club Championships as well. They're winning 2 or 3 games every time they every cycle, and they'll get to represent Oceania in the Club World Cup this year.
Yeah.
Alongside clubs like Liverpool, Chelsea, Real Madrid. So he's so it's they definitely always had their support, and so soccer's always had its thing, and people, and it didn't help that the Phoenix weren't that competitive in the A-League. I think they qualified for the playoffs a couple of times.
In more recent years, they've got to the playoffs a lot more, but yes, in their formation years, they did reasonably well, but they always seemed to just miss out on the playoffs, or if they did make it, they would lose in that first round. But as you said, they always had great support. I think for the longest time, in fact, perhaps up to this year, they've had the highest average crowd of any A-League team, or near highest. And this year, Auckland FC is the only team that's really beating them. The record crowds for an A-League this season have been the 3 games, Auckland versus Wellington. So they had a record for A-League attendance when Auckland went down to Wellington at the beginning of the season, and then they beat that by 1 when Wellington came to Auckland at Christmas, and then I think they beat that again when we beat them just recently at the end of February.
Yeah.
So we didn't even just do the double, because it's three times. Yeah. You play each team 3 times in the A-League, and so we did the triple on them. Yeah,
and it's a proper rivalry. Yeah. And Phoenix, as I said, the New Zealand clubs get really good crowds. Auckland now the Black Knights and the Phoenix are the only clubs to play outside the Confederation, which of the country that they're in. So, because obviously the A-League is in the AFC, but New Zealand is in the OFC. So even if the Black Knights win the title this year, they cannot play in the Champions League.
No.
Ditto for the Phoenix.
Yeah, that's always been the case for Phoenix.
And that's a rule not from the A-League, but from the AFC. And it sort of makes sense because I guess it's one thing to be going to Sydney from South, even if you're from like Singapore, which is the closest bit to Southeast Asia, Singapore, Indonesia. It's so far to go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And the home and away would be incredible. I think the furthest in a continental fixture we've had is there was in the 70s in the Europa, there was a team from Iceland that drew a team based in Vladivostok in Russia.
Oh.
And this was in the USSR times, so they were not allowed to fly over the pole and over Siberia like you can now.
Yeah.
So they literally had to fly over North America to get there.
Wow, yeah.
And around. So yeah, that is the furthest we've had. Yeah. And like New Zealand would be like, if you can already imagine it, like if it's a team based in somewhere like Syria or Jordan, all the way on that end of Asia, all having to travel all the way. Yeah. It's not even a single flight. In theory, you can make it to parts of Australia from that part of the world in a single flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like from we already have it, direct flights from Emirates and stuff to Sydney. You don't have a direct. I don't think you have a direct flight from Dubai to New Zealand. It all goes via. I think Qatar does though. I think Qatar, Auckland was at one point the longest commercial flight in terms of hours, and I've been on the flight that beat that in going to New York from Auckland. Yeah, it's interesting. Though technically I didn't break the record because our pilot managed to make it really early.
All right.
He saved an hour and a half flight time.
That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess it's a long flight, so you can nickel and dime quite a bit and get ahead. And you're encouraged to do so, I guess, in these long flights.
Yeah.
So the pilots probably actually do earn their wage a lot in these flights.
Yeah.
But as it is, Auckland, they're the latest club to be owned by Bill Foley, the owner of Bournemouth FC.
Mm-hmm.
He told everybody when he bought Bournemouth, this was the season we all predicted Bournemouth would get relegated, including us.
Yeah.
And then Bournemouth had all their receipts of everybody who predicted they'd get relegated. And he bought them in 2022 for, it now seems like an absolute bargain, 250 million US.
Yeah, that.
And he said, I can't even buy an MLS franchise with this, and I've got a Premier League franchise. And he said that they wouldn't get relegated, and this is there's a lot of people who have feelings about Americans owning football clubs. Bill Foley is probably one of the smartest owners in sport. Because as soon as he bought Bournemouth, the coach of Bournemouth, I can't remember his name, Gary, what's his surname, I can't remember, but he managed to keep Bournemouth up. And in the summer, he was immediately fired, and he got Areola in. This is the difference between Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who kept Ten Hag on, and then, had to fire him mid-season to get Amorim in.
Yeah.
Clearly, Because he told, like, he wrote a very complimentary letter about we're very grateful. He's forever welcome to come back and visit Bournemouth, and we'll be, but we think, new direction next season will be under a new manager, which I think it's ruthless, but at least he knows what he wants and he's following his plan. He's backed his own plan. Whereas, Manchester United's openly were trying to get other managers and then stuck to their old manager, which is never good. It's like, when, like, on TV where, like, a couple therapist goes, go see other people, and this other person's gone out, married, got kids with this other person, that, like, now come back to his wife, and you're like, wait, I think you went too far in seeing other people. So he's got Auckland FC. He also, like, he's obviously part of the got a multi-club model. So he owns Lorient in League Two, and he owns the Scottish club Hibs.
Yeah.
Which is also a decently big club. Arguably a bigger club than Bournemouth, but Bournemouth obviously a Premier League club.
Yeah.
I mean, it's set up pretty well because obviously he can always bring players into, if you've got a work permit to go and play in a Scottish club, then you have a work permit to play in an English club, right?
Yeah.
In the same country. And like Lorient, it's in France and it's near Ile-de-France, so they can, and it is, France is currently the country that produces the most talent in football.
Yeah.
Whether it's like immigrants from, former French colonies in Africa and around the world, or just, people growing up in France. Like, there's a reason why almost every multi-club, and these clubs were undervalued. So there's a reason why almost every multi-club guy owns like a French club in there. Like Chelsea with Strasbourg, I believe, the current guys, and it's a bit weird because Strasbourg are kind of a reasonably big club in French football, and they're kind of forced to be second banana to Chelsea, who are like a mega club. Like, to be fair, Chelsea's a mega club. Like, compared if that was Bournemouth and Strasbourg, it would be really awkward because Bournemouth's not a big club.
No.
Their stadium currently, I think, is 15k. It's a very clever buy because Bournemouth owned their stadium. They're close enough around London where he could easily end up. He's kind of part of that wider. If players know they can live in London and work in Bournemouth or live nearby, and apparently he did try to buy the Jacksonville Jaguars as well, but he ended up going to Shahid Khan instead.
Yeah.
That deal. So he's obviously owning an NFL franchise is basically a license to print money. Let's be fair. And he's been successful with almost all his clubs. Like AFC Bournemouth, nobody can say since 2022 like success story so far. Like, admittedly, it's been short, only 3 years, but we can say it's an unqualified success. Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, every other American ownership, the Glaziers obviously mixed, even Liverpool's owners, it's been a mixed bag, right? He's so far had it and been pretty much, like Chelsea's owners are like mixed bag. Yeah. This guy's not a mixed bag. And
no.
The Golden Knights in their first season, did go to the Stanley Cup final, and then I think 4 years later finally won a title for Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And Hibernian, there's Scottish football is Scottish football. You can't really expect I think the teams outside of the big Glasgow 2 to really compete, but I think Hibernian's one of the top 5, right? Like Scottish football, they're big 5. Obviously, the Old Firm, and then you've got the 2 Edinburgh clubs, Hibs and Hearts, and then you've got Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Those are the...
Exactly. So, like, Hibs is as you said, it's a big Scottish club, and I don't know if you can say arguably bigger than Bournemouth. I think it is bigger than Bournemouth. It's just, as you say, it's in Scotland, and the Premier League is just so much bigger than the Scottish Premier League. So there's that. But yeah.
Absolutely, and like Hibs has made a European final, and like it's in Edinburgh, so it's in a major city in Britain as well. And he's not even like a super rich billionaire, because he's only got apparently 1.6 billion. So he's not throwing money at problems. He's just cleverly running the companies.
Yeah, exactly.
And like more importantly, like his background is more in hospitality, so things like wineries, golf courses, hotels. So it's compared to like a lot of other like people, like your everybody else almost seems to be like a hedge fund guy.
Yeah.
Whereas he actually worked in entertainment before buying a football club. So Auckland generally have, and I think the fact that they're named the Black Knights, it's kind of a throwback to the original name.
Yeah.
Of New Zealand Knights, and it kind of matches with his team, the Golden Knights of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And like Black Knights kind of suits in Auckland, like a New Zealand-based team, and Golden Knights kind of suits a name for a Vegas franchise, like them being, the team that plays in gold.
And that is
that's what you expect.
Yeah, and the consortium name he has is the Black Knight Sports and Entertainment. So.
Yeah. And playing at, and I think the other smart thing they did is that they decided they were going to play at Go Media Stadium, or what we like to call Mount Smart.
Yeah.
Or
that is definitely a smart move, because that's such an awesome stadium to go to.
It is an awesome stadium to go to. It's easy to get to because it's got convenient train connections, like Eden Park. Like getting to Eden Park is not hard. Because if you can get to downtown, there are so many ways, and there's so many ways to get to Eden Park from not going to downtown. Like if you've got train access.
Yeah.
Or you can get to a train.
Theoretically, the train for Eden Park's slightly closer than Mount Smart, though, or Go Media, because that's a little bit more of a hike from Penrose to the actual stadium, but still close enough.
In a way, that's better, because you start walking together, right? There's people congregate in the shops around the railway station, and then like basically 20-30 minutes before the game, everybody starts walking. This is what happens in the Warriors games, right?
Yeah.
And like,
and the Port, which is the Auckland FC fan club, create an awesome atmosphere when they go and they walk that whole way. Just big group, songs, flags, flares, everything is just an atmosphere and a half.
We know the atmosphere will be good, because we knew the atmosphere back when the Kings played in Mount Smart and when the Knights played were good.
Well, to begin with,
the teams were bad. The fans were never bad here.
The fans were never bad. No, the support did wane right at the very end, but in general, they still had a loyal fan base that showed up, and
especially the football Kings.
Yeah, especially the football Kings had a good time.
Yeah. And so it doesn't surprise me that Auckland FC has a good fan atmosphere, and this is built, the multi-club people know how to engender this support, and it doesn't directly compete with the existing New Zealand football infrastructure. So if you're an Auckland City or a West Coast Rangers / Waitakere United or Napier Rovers fan, you don't hate the Black Knights or Wellington Phoenix. They don't compete in your league.
Yeah, and both those teams have done very well at integrating with the clubs, with the New Zealand clubs, and looking to use their
like the Breakers have done with New Zealand basketball.
Exactly. The Breakers are another good example of a New Zealand sports franchise in the Australian leagues that just does really well in terms of New Zealand support, and also working with the local infrastructure to make it all work.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that the Black Knights have shown that like there's always been a sleeping giant underneath of soccer in New Zealand. Like
Yeah,
it's not a sport you can ban from high school like you can with rugby league.
yeah, yeah,
It's always had a high number of people participating, and there's always had sponsors like McDonald's. Like McDonald's will always be interested in sponsoring soccer in whatever
yeah,
country they're in, and things like that. You know, like they've always had good-ish sponsors. And they've had lots. The culture around soccer in New Zealand has always like the volunteers and people like even like fan groups. There's so much people who participate and do a lot of volunteer like work. Like when I first moved into our house in Massey, where we lived in near Makura Road, literally there was only 3 people in our neighborhood, like 'cause it was a new subdivision, and one of our neighbors, just because I happened to be wearing a shirt which had, it wasn't even a jersey, it was just a t-shirt with Manchester United, and it had like Ryan Giggs and stuff on it.
yeah, yeah.
And my brother was wearing like a Liverpool one. He just came and said, "Oh, you should come to the Immigrant because that's where all the football fans come and watch games." And like, there's a Chelsea fan club, there's a Liverpool fan club, and there's a Manchester United fan club. And we were just like, "Oh, okay." Like, and that's just something people, like that soccer culture in New Zealand. Like, as soon as you find somebody interested in football, like you like tell them, "Oh, this is where you can go." And like, there's no gatekeeping. Everybody wants people to enjoy football,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
whether they're men, women, because we enjoy watching both in New
Yeah, yeah,
Zealand. And the so like, I think the fact that the Black Knights have been so successful at building up that fan base, it just shows it was already there. And I think people already like the Premier League is all encompassing. Like, it's made football mainstream in New Zealand because football was almost a niche. Like, it was a hipster sport, right?
yeah,
For a long time, like, you were a hipster if you liked football. Unless you were an immigrant from a country where football is the most popular.
yeah,
Like, if you grew up in New Zealand and like, in like a household of people who are New Zealanders, like, be like, soccer? Really?
yeah,
Like, that's why there's like the specific areas of New Zealand where soccer is the most popular, like Pukekohe, Kumiu, Napier, and like Miramar in Wellington, etc.
yeah,
And the club, like, obviously they're also gonna play in the women's league. Uh, uh, Once that season,
yeah. I
once
think
the season starts next season.
next season, I think, yeah. They've got their they've also got their reserves are going to play in the New Zealand National Premier League this coming season as well. Like the Phoenix have their reserves play in the New Zealand top flight as well, and so that will have the Black Knights reserves playing in that, which is another way that they help bolster the game here in New Zealand to make sure there's a professional aspect to it, is that they're able to field a team.
Yeah, they would be the only, like, because at the moment there's only Auckland FC, right, and the 2 reserve teams that play in the league that are like full-time professional teams.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not Auckland FC, Auckland City.
Yeah.
You have to be precise because Auckland City are a different entity to Auckland FC.
Yeah, and there's Auckland United as well, which is a different one again. So.
Yeah. But Auckland City are the club which has like 6 Champions Leagues in their cabinet and all that. And then there's also Waitakere. So there's 3 clubs in Auckland. They're all pretty big. Waitakere or West Coast.
Well,
and
West Coast is Waitakere is sort of topped, and then West Coast whilst they're the West Coast Rangers,
That's-
whilst they're they've taken over that, they haven't kept the same. I don't think they're allowed to keep the trophies. The trophies don't count for them. So West Coast Rangers don't have any trophies.
It doesn't count for West Coast, but because Waitakere FC still exists, like the feeder club of Waitakere United, all those feeder clubs get to say that they've won a Champions League because they've contributed to that setup. It's weird because it's a club that had 2 Champions Leagues, right? And it was like the best club in Oceania for a long time.
For a bit there, yeah.
And they won back when Australia was in, Oceania. So it actually means something when you've won a Champions League.
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion. And because Auckland FC, because it's a reserve team that's not really gonna have a rivalry with like West Coast already has a rivalry with Auckland City, and Auckland United, because they're already in the city.
Yeah.
I'm guessing these reserve team FC the Black Knights will have the reserve team will have the rivalry with the Phoenix reserve team.
Yeah, I should. The reserve team for the Black Knights can play out of Fred Taylor Park as well.
Oh yeah. So they're even playing in the best amateur football stadium.
Yeah.
Fred Taylor Park. Nice. And the regular season, currently they have a 4-point lead at the top of the table with a game in hand.
Yes. So yeah, they probably they could have pretty much clinched it with the win against Central Coast in the weekend, but they succumbed to a 2-2 draw. Pushes off that a little bit more. We're not. We're only a few games left. 5 games left. So a couple more wins in there, but they're getting pretty close to being crowned champion. So 4 games with a game in hand of Western United.
Yeah.
And then it's another 4 points back to Western Sydney and Melbourne City.
Yeah. And Western United and Western Sydney, they're these heartland franchises, in the A-League.
Yeah.
They're in the areas where football is the most popular sport. Because Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, they play in the more Aussie rules parts of the city.
Yeah.
Same with Sydney. And it's interesting that Perth Glory, who traditionally are usually really good, they're at the bottom of the table this season. Because Perth Glory were for a while Wellington's biggest rival.
Yeah. It was much like the
Breakers and
the
Wildcats.
And the Wildcats, yeah. The Phoenix and the Glory, and they were both doing reasonably well. But yeah, this year, and the Phoenix also not doing so well at the tail end of the season. They started off reasonably good. Even after the first 5 games, the Phoenix were at the top with the Black Knights, but they've dropped away, especially post-Christmas. They just basically haven't managed to win a game, and now they're all the way down to 11th. So I think they're pretty much out.
Because I'm pretty sure the Glory are the most popular, are the most successful team in the A-League, aren't they? They've won the most titles, surely.
Be pretty close, I would say. First championships, no, Sydney FC has the most with 5 titles, but the Perth Glory won't be far off that. They'll probably have 4, I think.
I think if you count the before A-League when they had it, if you count terms of like who's been the champion of Australia for the most number of times, then it is the Perth Glory. But if it's just the A-League, which started in 2004, then it's probably not the Perth Glory.
No, it's Sydney.
Yeah. Because they redid the A-League to make it more, to streamline it. They knew they were going to join the AFC. But otherwise, I think the league though has been really well managed. Like they've managed to, they've grown slowly but properly. Like it's all gone into areas where we know football is a big is popularly played, like in Western and like New Zealand and Perth. And it's because Perth is the thing where they've got the most successful soccer team and the most successful basketball team in the country. But neither of those sports are the most popular sport in WA. Because it's AFL by miles.
Yeah.
And like football, like I don't think there is a state in Australia where football is the most popular.
No.
But I think probably Western Melbourne comes the closest.
Yeah, it would have to be somewhere in Melbourne that would come the closest, and so
I
therefore
think
Western
Melbourne has probably got is the place where football's at least the second most popular sport, and it competes with, and Western Sydney is right, it's rugby league but also football.
Yeah.
But football is there's a gap. Rugby league, let's face it, West Sydney and basically Manchester are the heart of rugby league in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously football's not going to compete with rugby league in West Sydney, but it's clearly the second best. Nobody cares about Union or AFL.
Yeah, exactly.
Those two teams. Those are the two sports where there's only one West Sydney team for soccer, whereas there's 4 in rugby league.
Yeah.
In the inner suburbs, and it's similar situation in Melbourne, because Sydney's only got the 2 teams, but Melbourne's got 3 for football. So soccer's always been more popular in Melbourne, I think, than in Sydney.
Yeah. Oh no, it's definitely more popular in Melbourne than Sydney.
Yeah.
Melbourne's the heart of Australian football, really.
Yeah, I agree. And it's still the place where there's the lower clubs down the pyramid. There's way more of them in Melbourne than there is in Sydney.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to remain a soccer fan and still remain an AFL fan versus sticking, being a soccer fan and rugby league fan. You won't be both. You'll tend to really like one over the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, looking at the rest of the schedule for the
rest of the season,
Auckland. Yeah, so they're playing Brisbane on Sunday, and Wellington
Sunday
play
week.
Western. Sunday week, yeah.
The 30th is this weekend, the international window. So after the international.
After the international window, which we will get into because exciting things are happening.
Yeah.
This international window. After that, if the title isn't decided, it'll almost certainly be decided on the 25th, match day 25, 5th April, Auckland FC versus Western Sydney Wanderers. That looks like a top-of-the-table clash.
Mm-hmm.
And then Western United are playing the Perth Glory, which they should win, given how badly the Perth Glory look at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think if Auckland manages to win one of those two games, they're pretty much guaranteed the minor premiership, right? Winning the top of the...
I think if they win those two, they'll be 6th. Well, they'll keep their 4 points. I mean, no, they still need to win another. It's depending if... Well, yeah. If they beat Western Sydney, then it'll be Western United. It'll still be close enough. I don't think we play...
They need to win at least 2 more games to guarantee.
Yeah.
3 more games, I think. Then
3 more games to guarantee.
3 more games to guarantee.
Unless, of course, Western United lose something and Western Sydney lose in there. So, I mean, yeah, Western Sydney's going to lose one of them because they're playing. One of those games is
Black Knights.
The Black Knights. So that one will kick them out of the race if the Black Knights win. And then it's Western United. But Western United go play Western Sydney Wanderers the week after in Western Sydney. So that could be the round that put it in. So Auckland FC will be over in Sydney if they win that. Even I think potentially if that's a draw between Western Sydney and Western United, that might, as long as Auckland FC have won up to then that's probably going to be enough.
Because it's the top 6 that make the playoff, right?
Oh yeah. If we're talking about top 6, then I think we're pretty safe anyway. Like, we'll definitely be top 6, 42 points. Adelaide United slipped down to 33, so that's 9 points. So I think, yeah, just one more win and that will guarantee playoffs. It's going for top spot and therefore home advantage throughout the final series.
Yeah.
Or whatever advantage higher up gives through the final series anyway.
I think because it looks like there's an elimination final and then it's a 2-leg semi-final, so
yeah.
I'm guessing the top 2 teams get a bye and then the next 4 teams play in the elimination final and
then the winners go on to play that, and the winners of that go to the grand finals. So being top 2 will be helpful for that.
Yeah.
And I think the grand finals in Sydney no matter what, or do they send that off to the top ranked 5?
We can have a look. I'm sure it will say.
I know a few years back that was 2022. That was up to last year. Oh no, up to this year. So yes, it's in Sydney. This is the final year of the finals being hosted in Sydney.
Yeah. So after that, it's no longer going to be hosted in Sydney.
I think so.
But it'll be interesting nonetheless. Because I guess it's one of the interesting things about Australia's sports leagues is that there is a nil home for the final where it's always played. Like, even if it's like a match between Brisbane Lions versus, Perth West Coast Eagles in a grand final of the AFL, it'll be played in the MCG.
Yeah.
And, rightfully so. It's the home of Australian rules football.
Yeah.
It's a bit weirder with rugby league being always... Because the Sydney Football Stadium was a rugby league ground. It properly felt like, a grand final and everybody, that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Homebush is just not the same.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they had the finals in Suncorp Stadium a few years ago and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there is merit to the idea of, like, moving the finals around, I think, in rugby league between Brisbane and Sydney.
I think
and
so,
maybe
yeah.
not Melbourne, because you'd be competing directly with AFL at that time of year.
Yeah, well, exactly. So yeah, I think between Sydney and
Auckland,
Brisbane.
Sydney, maybe Auckland. Sydney, Brisbane, maybe Auckland.
Yeah, maybe Auckland. they would have awesome attendance there. You could hold it at Eden Park, and you'd probably sell it out. They'd probably just get upset because of the amount of people that would be travelling from Sydney or Brisbane that would whine about having to travel over to Auckland just to watch the final.
Yeah, but the thing of like, do you want to? Because like the issue is Homebush. Like I think if it was held, I wouldn't mind if the rugby league grand final, NRL grand final was always held at Suncorp. That would be fine with me.
Yeah.
Or back at the Sydney Football Stadium.
Yeah.
Again. Because Eden Park, Auckland has shown like when they had the Nines, it works. Because people don't mind if it's a thing they know in advance that that's what it's going to be. It's a pain to go to Auckland if, they make the final like in Super Rugby. Yeah,
you gotta work. Wait.
You gotta work it out, and you gotta wait. Whereas if this year the final is here, everybody can prep for it. Like nobody's nobody's in the dark about, and it's not gonna surprise anyone.
Yeah.
And like you just, that can just become the culture around it. Like, football's always played we've always played the FA Cup at Wembley, or, a stadium that is being, we know the stadium where it is going to be played every year, or the Champions League, we know where it's going to be played every year.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no, like, if you want to go to Champions League and get you could buy tickets to the Champions League final now if you want. You just don't know what teams will be there.
Yeah, exactly. But you know where it's going to be.
Yeah, you know where it's going to be, what time. You can arrange your hotels and everything like that.
Yeah.
And get yourself set up. So that's definitely something they can do. And like Australia, it's already the A-League is here to stay, I think. Like it's a good, like the fact that, City Football Group has a team in the league, and we're probably gonna see like a Red Bull Brisbane team or something like that in a few years.
It will come eventually.
And like Todd Bowley will own like one of the teams for Chelsea, and like because in Asia, that's the easiest market to set yourself up. It's like an English-speaking, of the countries.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure. Japan's westernized and advanced and everything, but, it's not English-speaking, like, as a general rule, like, which Australia has as an advantage. And there is lots of, like, there is money in Australia to be made. Because while it has less people than Japan, as a general rule, people in Australia have more disposable income.
Mm.
The other way, like, just the flip side. And, like, like with the number of people moving in from, Australia's always been an immigrant country. Like most of the people coming in from those countries tend to be soccer fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Like it's this weird thing. Like in America, like soccer fans end up having to give up soccer. Like in history, like they've had to end up giving up soccer because like it was seen as a foreign thing, and they, ended up, following basketball or American football or baseball.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australia, you keep following football and soccer, but you will pick up a local rugby league team or a local AFL team as well.
Yeah.
And it might be your second, like, like soccer's never, like, it's never seen as the other. Like there is a lot of culture war in America around soccer. Like there's an element of like right-leaning Americans who just think it's un-American.
Yeah.
And like they absolutely hate it. Like there's nothing like that in Australia. Like they might call it, quote unquote, a wog ball, but everybody's into it.
Yeah.
Like that was literally how somebody explained it to me decades ago. And by the way, obviously I'm just using the word they use. I'm not using the word
It's
walk.
the quote unquote, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Because he was just like, look, this is how the tribes of Australians work. If you're from Queensland or New South Wales, you play Rugby League. If you live west of Broken Hill, you play aerial ping pong. And if you went to private school, then you play rara ball. And if your parents came from the Middle East or Eastern Europe, then you play wog ball.
Yeah.
And that's the 4 football tribes in Australia. But most rugby kind of picked up as this big thing in Australia because they had so much international success. And Australia, obviously the 2006 World Cup had a huge impact because they were successful in that tournament and had so many great moments, and they've kind of had a good moment in every World Cup they've appeared in since then. I think it'd be fair to say they've always either won a match or they've played well in matches to kind of give people even if you have a campaign like New Zealand did in the 2010 World Cup, that energizes a fan base, right? And gets the country into... And there's loads of Australian players who played in and have played in the big European leagues.
Yeah.
Especially in the Premier League. So it increases your... There's a lot more energy around. I think one could almost argue that national team that everyone in Australia kind of supported when they played, which was rugby union with the Wallabies, it's kind of been taken over by the Socceroos.
Yeah.
That niche of that national team everybody follows, they play in the World Cup all the time now. It's questionable. The Wallabies might not qualify for if it wasn't being held in Australia, would they have qualified for the Rugby World Cup?
Maybe not.
Whereas I can't conceive of a future now, especially with the expanded World Cup, where Australia doesn't make the Football World Cup.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, say with the expanded thing.
If they came back to Oceania, it's open misère. They should be in the World Cup final almost every time.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're in Asia, obviously it's gonna have a huge impact on New Zealand, right? Think about how big soccer became just with the All Whites qualifying in 2000 for the 2010 World Cup. For a good 6 weeks, the country was breathing All Whites, and they played pretty well in that tournament. Well, and it was our second... people still spoke in hushed tones and reverence about the team that made it to the 82 World Cup, that lost every game, right? Had not even gotten a point, and, only scored 2 goals?
Is that? 2?
Yeah, their biggest impact, you could argue, is the fact that they only lost 4-0 to Brazil because Brazil were being nice and didn't score more goals after scoring 4 in the first half, because they were they're amateurs. There's no need to bully them. But because of that, Yugoslavia, I think there was Yugoslavia or some other team beat them 8-0. So Brazil went and finished second in their group, and they ended up in the second group stage. They ended up in the same group as Italy, who ended up winning the World Cup.
Yeah.
If they had finished top, they would have probably gone into a different group and might have ended up winning the World Cup instead.
Exactly. It could have been, a different thing.
And it was purely because they were being nice. Because that 82 Brazil World Cup team is one of the most beloved teams of all time.
Yeah.
They're considered one of the best teams to have never won the World Cup, right? And one of the reasons they didn't win the World Cup is because they didn't thrash New Zealand. And whereas, New Zealand basically knocked Italy out, right? In the 2010 World Cup with the draw.
With the draw. I mean, Italy sort of knocked themselves out. But at the same time, we we drew against them. They, and they didn't make it through based on that. So
Yeah, pretty much. New Zealand undefeated in the 2010, only undefeated team in the 2010 World Cup.
yeah,
Yeah.
undefeated.
Undefeated and no wins.
No, we don't need to mention that part.
And following that proud history, New Zealand are looking to make a third entry into the World Cup in 2026. This week, in the international break, New Caledonia will be playing against Tahiti in Wellington for the semi-finals. And New Zealand will play against Fiji, and assuming New Zealand win, which is also going to be played in Wellington.
Yeah,
so it's a double header.
Yes.
Then the final will be played between the two teams at Eden Park
On Monday,
on March the 24th, on Monday.
Yeah.
And the runner-up will then go into the Interconfederation playoffs. So there's always a chance, assuming New Zealand win, that one of New Caledonia or Tahiti could still have a second chance. But they'll be up against some big teams, including like teams from Europe or South America. So best of luck, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, very unlikely.
And so this is New Zealand probably will make their third appearance at the World Cup. It'll be an expanded. And it's gonna be like a really interesting situation where like football is really gonna hit it big. Like I don't think people realize like what impact it'll have on growing a sport in a country when your country just starts qualifying regularly for the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in Ireland, like soccer overtook Gaelic sports in the 90s when Ireland were good at football, and Ireland now with rugby, they're suddenly good and regularly making it to the quarterfinals, and not any further in the World Cup. But they're regularly doing well in the Six Nations and getting to the top of the table. And as we mentioned, Australia, where regular qualifying for the World Cup and also playing in the AFC, in the Asian Championships is also and immediately winning the Asian Championships kind of gave them a huge boost. Like New Zealand's expected to win the OFC Championship.
Yes, exactly.
Where same as Australia were expected to win it, versus like now they're in a confederation where winning it actually means something when people respect what they've accomplished. Like we can be annoyed with Ange Postecoglou, but he's got them a continental title for Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's gonna be an interesting season. Like the round ball down here is picking up leaps and bounds, and with both Auckland FC and with the All Whites, and I think the fact that Chris Wood is having a magic season.
Oh yeah, no, he's having an amazing season as well. So hopefully he can bring that and really put on a show.
Yeah.
And Wellington then in Auckland. Which, as you say, we should win both those games relatively easily, but the doing's still to be done. So
absolutely. And you just have to get out of the way. Like there will come a time when a team other than New Zealand will win this qualifying thing. Right now New Zealand, there's no excuse not to. There's in terms of resources available compared to everybody else in Oceania, it's massive gap. And the fact that they're playing all the games in New Zealand show that.
Yeah. Previously, they'd
So-
sort of taken them round a little bit, but yeah, this time it's New Zealand hosting. But I think that's just also the OFC being a bit smarter. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
where
it costs
people are
a
gonna
lot of money to travel around Oceania.
Yeah.
And these FAs don't have that much money.
no, exactly.
And already football is like not necessarily the most like in Oceania, probably of all the members, only countries like Tahiti and Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, soccer's the most popular, because Fiji it's 50-50,
Yeah.
maybe New Caledonia. Fiji 50-50 with sevens and rugby, sevens and soccer. And Papua New Guinea, clearly rugby league is the most popular sport over there by miles.
Yeah.
And New Zealand by miles it's rugby. And Samoa, Tonga, and all of them it's rugby.
Yeah, exactly.
Well ahead. So it's the one confederation where you just have to make it simpler for everyone.
Yeah. Exactly. They really. I think we've talked about it before, just about making it nice and simple, and not be too crazy about it, and just make it so that the different nations can make it to the games easy. Make sure that pre-planning is possible, and that everything's just going to be smooth, because there's no point making it complicated.
Absolutely.
Before we go, did you see that I think it was last week, that for the 2030 World Cup, the South American hosts had put forward a proposal to expand it to 64 teams for 2030. It's a one-off special because it was the 100-year celebration.
Because they want to host a few more games in South America, which makes sense.
Which makes sense. So yeah.
Because there's already a whole heap of traveling. I mean, I don't mind it. And there's so many countries hosting it, so it's not going to be an issue with not enough venues, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's exactly that. It's just 'cause at the moment it's just one game each in the 3 South American host countries, host cities. So it will be to because there was a lot of complaints as well from teams that have to go play that one game down in South America and then come all the way back up to Europe / Africa to play the rest. Let's have a few more games down there to make it worthwhile.
Yeah. A 64-team World Cup is more elegant because you just top 2 in every, then you've got a round of 32.
Yeah.
So you've expanded the number of games by 1 for each team compared to the 7 that you currently have. You've got an extra knockout round.
Yeah.
Unless you're gonna do round of 16 onwards, but it's only top team from every group qualifies, but that would lose a lot of excitement because teams would be eliminated very quickly.
Yeah.
Or at least a team that would be there that can't qualify. Whereas like the last World Cup, we had 3 or 4 of the groups completely open on the last week. And the last few days of the group stages were so exciting to watch for that reason.
Yeah, well, exactly. So yeah, expanding 64, as you say, would make a whole lot of games at the beginning sort of meaningless is the wrong word, but very entirely predictable. So it would mean that, and as a lot of online people have pointed out, logistically it will be a bit of a nightmare because it's already huge enough as it is. It just mean a whole lot of overlapping games though, which may not be as palatable for broadcasters and stuff, because you'd have to play a whole lot more games at the same time as each other, just to logistically fit them into a time span that actually makes sense.
You do that anyway in the World Cup during the group stages, so that's not too bad.
Not too bad, it's just more of them. And The other thing that was pointing out here was that it takes away basically all the qualification process. I mean, there's still some, because there's still teams that have to miss out. But especially, say, South America, like how many... It's already bad enough they've got 3 countries qualifying for that just by being hosts. Now you're expanding it, so do they have a qualification process? Like, or does just all the South American teams go?
South America's gone from the toughest qualifying thing to arguably being the least tough to qualify out of.
Yeah.
Like South America, even for Brazil and Argentina, as it's set up now, is hard.
Yeah.
To qualify through. Because you have to play everyone. And it makes it really, really unpredictable. And that aspect will still be there, but it's gone from 4.5 to 6.5 now, which is basically makes it way easier.
Yeah. And say if you add another,
and you can even lose a few games and still make it through.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me. So I do think that that would be very, very interesting. But if you're expanding it by 64, clearly the places to give the extra spots to are Asia and Africa, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Because they're the ones least represented. Maybe a bit more. Like North America, the countries that you want will almost certainly always already make it, especially with the expanded 48. Because from 48 to 64, that's an expansion of 16 teams. And you've got 6 confederations. Let's just say, for argument's sake, 4 of those are an additional intercontinental thing of that 16. So you've got 12, and you give every confederation an extra 2, except CONMEBOL. And you give those the remaining extra 2, 1 each to Africa and Asia.
Yeah.
And not Oceania, obviously. So 1 extra to Africa, Oceania, North America, and Europe. I mean, that's one way you could do it.
That would work, yeah.
Because North America doesn't need more spots after 6.5. That would make a shambles of their qualification. 8.5 out of 12. Who's not going to this World Cup?
Yeah, exactly.
Or 8 1/3. But if you have a bunch of... Heck, even if you did a bunch of all these 16 teams were coming out of playoffs from the various continents, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think you're right. 64 teams seems excessive.
Does seem excessive. Yeah. It's a little bit just them wanting mark the 100 years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's what will inevitably happen, right? In a 64-team World Cup, heck, FIFA might have China and India in a football World Cup.
Yeah.
If India qualifies regularly India and China become one of those countries that regularly qualify for a football World Cup like South Korea and Japan do out of Asia. Let me be clear. If India gets into that position where it's qualified for 3 or 4 World Cups in a row and it's just expected that they'll always qualify for the World Cup and they compete well in the Asia Cup in football, in 20, 30 years, people won't remember who Sachin Tendulkar is in India. Because the World Cup is just so big.
Yeah.
And as I said, Asia should do what Africa does and have their continent, and North America does, and have their continental competition every 2 years. Yeah.
No, we talked about that before as well.
Yeah. I think that would make it even more, make soccer grow even more, and that is where the thing is. where soccer makes most of its money, the EPL and all these leagues, is people in that part of the world, East Asia and India, who stay up late and watch games.
Yeah.
And get that ad revenue and all that in that part of the world. And if they're now regularly qualifying for World Cups as well. Heck, you have a player who's the equivalent of a Son Heung-min from India or China
Oh yeah.
playing in the Premier League, and it changes everything
Exactly.
in terms of perception. Like, I think soccer went from being from being second in Korea with baseball to being the most popular pretty much as soon as like South Korea became a team that regularly qualified and put in good performances at the World Cup. And like that like it's a virtuous cycle. Like, you start producing players like Park Ji-sung and Son Heung-min and the like, and it just builds on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. They say it is a virtuous cycle. Once you start, getting if you start making World Cups, then eyes come, national eyes coming on you. People see that as like, oh yeah, we could play football here. More players playing. Also, the eyes from outside look that way, like, oh, that team's not so bad. Must be a couple of decent players. Maybe we'll pick up a couple. They make it to Premier League or somewhere else. More eyes on it. More people like, oh look, I could do that. So then they play, and you get more of the good sports players wanting to play football. Get a better team. It all just sort of builds on each other.
I mean, the classic example is Japan, right? They didn't even have a professional league until 1991.
Yeah.
And now Japan's one of the best countries in Asia at football. Yeah. And, football's arguably the most popular now? Maybe just behind baseball because Shohei Ohtani exists? But, if Shohei Ohtani had decided to become a soccer player and became the equivalent of what he is at baseball and football, it would be flipped, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And, and it's the same thing in America, right? Like, MLS only started after the '94 World Cup. Yeah. And then it, built from that, and it became this self-fulfilling virtuous cycle. And the MLS had its ups and downs, it almost went bankrupt, and then Frank Gerber, the guy who they hired from NFL, turned it all around for the league. And he basically just went, look, I want every team to have their own stadium, and it'd be like a soccer specific stadium that is less than 30K. And it's that was such a good owning your own stadium, which which is smaller and you can use to earn income and everything, made every club more stable and created the fan culture and everything that makes football good.
Yeah.
But more games, more player injuries. It's never good. You and I have spoken about this, so
there's that.
We'll see what happens. That is the big downside of the expanded format. The window is what it is, and every game you add adds up. I mean, imagine how many games would Rodri play in that 2030 World Cup?
There's a good point.
Assuming he's still playing football at that point. Touch wood that he is.
Yeah.
Because he's a great player, but he might be burnt out by then.
Well, exactly. It is quite likely, but yeah.
But we'll see how that plays out. I mean, it's a suggestion, and it will happen because I think there's too much money to be made now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, now it's been mentioned, it's it seems like it will likely happen just because.
Yeah, just because people are like, but money.
Yeah, but have you thought money?
Exactly. It's like when in cricket, where when the big three were forming, and South Africa were like, we could be part of your big three. It'll be a big four, and they went, okay, where's your money, bro? And they're like, no, we're a good team. Like, haha, good joke.
Good joke. Yeah, you thought this was about being good.
And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And yeah, so on that note, I think that's all we have time for today.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for listening, and look forward to hearing from you next time.
Catch you next time.
Well, that is the end. Thanks for listening all the way through.
If you liked what you heard, we have even more. NineSixFourTwo Discord and a Buy Me a Coffee.
Pretty sure it's Buy Me a Beer.
Oh yeah, buy me a beer on buymeacoffee.com.
In both these places, you can talk to us, and we may even listen, especially if you do buy a said beer or coffee. I might still be confused.
Yes, we're easily bribed. All links are in the show notes below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
This is on YouTube.